On behalf of Art at America Society, we would like to welcome you tonight to Strikes and Strokes, Painting the 2000s New York, a conversation featuring artists Annette Weher, Fabienne Lasserre, and Alejandra Siever. The conversation is going to be moderated by Aimee Iglesias Luquin, Director and Chief Curator of Art at America Society, and Curator of Alejandra Siever, Interior with Landscapes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in this extremely hot day. I know it's an effort. It's funny because we all celebrate summer, but then when it becomes so summery, it becomes a problem, especially in New York with the subway. So thank you, everybody, for that. I just want to say that I am extremely excited about this conversation. I am really happy to have these three artists and friends together to discuss their practice, life, and New York, and painting. You know, painting is a topic that keeps coming back, and I think that's very interesting. And I'm going to invite the three of you to take a moment to, introduce yourselves, tell the audience a little bit of who you are. I know there are some friends in the audience, but maybe they don't know, they only know one of you. How you started or how you came to New York, a word or two about the role of painting in your practice and how you met the other two, so people get a sense of the connections in between you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Fabienne Lasserre, and I'm a sculptor. Those are not my paintings, those are Annette's. Over there, but I make sculpture that are vary in relation to painting, and I call myself a painter with my friends. I came to New York from Montreal in the early 2000s, so 2002 I came, and I met Alejandra almost immediately, but we didn't know well, but a lot of people kept on saying, you need to meet her, your work you have something in common, her humor, you'll love her. And it's true, and finally we met and became pretty close friends. And Annette, there was a similar story. I saw her painting at a friend's of mine. He had a painting of hers over the sofa, and I fell in love, and I just hunted her down and wanted to meet her, and did.
Okay, so hi, I'm Annette. Thank you also for coming on this hot day again. And I moved to New York in 2001 after a year in Germany kind of kicking around. And I've been painting since then, all along. And how did I meet you? I met you.
I hunted you down.
You hunted me down, but also I was doing an artist-run space with some other people, and you brought something to the first show there. So I met you then, and we like you just explained, we were met a few times. And then we had a 2-person show together in 2016, I think.
Yeah, you were pregnant.
Yes.
I remember.
Right. And you, I met in the neighborhood. We moved to the same weird neighborhood in Brooklyn. Yes. And so we had to meet. Yeah.
Well, I am Alejandra. The show downstairs has a very big display of my work since 95 to now. I'm a painter that escapes from painting and comes back to painting. I sort of gather things around and always bring it back to the painting. And I met Fabienne because we shared the same gallery that was Virgile de Bolder, that actually he has some works of his collection also being shown. And I saw one of your first shows and I went crazy. And it was very different from today, actually. Mm-hmm. It was all full of hair, fingernails, and it was extreme in a very abject way. And it's surprising for me also that I like that so much, and you change so much, and I like so much what you do now. And Annette in the neighborhood, because I arrived to New York in 1999, and in 2000 I went to Skowhegan, and Annette is married with a alumni that we went together, and then we were in the same neighborhood. That is a very new neighborhood in Brooklyn. Well, new, like we were conquering the neighborhood. And she was a painter and lived 2 blocks away. And also my friend Cecilia lives in the same neighborhood and she's a painter as well. So that's how I met Annette. And then we shared the studio. Right. And yes, so that's how we met.
That was the messiest studio ever.
The more fun.
Yeah.
For how long did you share a studio, approximately?
We were never together actually. I had a shift and she had another one because our kids were different ages, and I think we
almost never saw each other.
We never saw each other. Yeah, but I don't like 1 year.
Maybe
1 year. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was.
I was all walls and she was all floor.
Yes, right. Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And something that the three of you, proposed to discuss, which I think it's very interesting, is to talk a little bit first about, New York in the 2000s, the early 2000s or mid 2000s, the mainstream, but also the alternative spaces. And maybe we can combine comments on the two, which artists and spaces you were following and why. How did it feel like that New York, which seems like yesterday, but it wasn't. It's not. It's long. We're in 2024, right? Yes. So the early 2000s is already our history. I mean,
yes, it's 24 years ago. Yeah. Well, I couldn't. I arrived in 1999 in September, so for me was all new. I couldn't discriminate in between mainstream or not. For me, everything was very new, but I kind of remember some names that were the important names, like Cecily Brown or Murakami, or those big shows like Chelsea was the scene already. They all already went to Chelsea after Soho. And something I was thinking today that was Jeffrey Deitch, how he was there at that moment, then he left, and now he came back in such a different way, and that can give us a sense of how much New York changed, in a way. For me, the most alternative, I met very, as soon as I arrived, I met David Reed, and he was teacher of LA painters that I really liked. And for me, that was the most alternative, like Ingrid Calame, Monique Prieto. There was a current that for me was very strangely related. The LA art was related to British art, and I liked that. That was my alternative. That's it. But we arrived at the same time, more or less.
Yes, almost. I arrived in 2002.
No.
And what I remember is, especially compared to Canada, or Quebec, where I'm from, is an art world like flush with money and a kind of star system, and like big names and a lot of figurative painting, and feeling kind of at a loss in that world and uninterested of some of the aspects. And then you mentioned David Reed. He curated in 2006 with Katie Siegel this show called Hard Times, High Times, which was a revelation because they were all names of artists that had been eclipsed, but that who were investigating paintings in really kind of fresh, interesting ways, but in the 60s and 70s. And it was like, wow, a lot of us, I felt, there's a precedent for what we're trying to do now. So that was an important moment.
Yeah, for me, when I got to New York, I was thinking about it on the way here, and I was like, I remember like garage band music. That's something I was like, going to that kind of, that was a style. Like, people was kind of like, I lived in the Navy Yard and worked for an artist in his studio in Greenpoint. His name's Chaim Steinbach, and he was like a Neo Geo artist. So I was kind of getting a lot of veils lifted about like what happens when you reach a certain level, in your career. That was kind of painful in some ways to observe. And Williamsburg was like not what it looks like now. Like I was riding my bike along Kent Avenue and it was like a burned out wasteland, like, you know, trucks on fire, just really apocalyptic.
Yeah, we live in Williamsburg.
That was in Williamsburg.
I know, but it
Yeah.
was a neighborhood that we
Yeah.
could live.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
It was affordable.
Right, it wasn't like what it is now at all. So I don't know, I felt pretty alienated by mainstream, like I felt like I was, because of Haim and what I was around a lot of things that were manufactured, you know, like it was about production, nothing about like touch. So I was looking for that kind of garage band version of painting, and I feel like I found that like in Chinatown at a place like Canada, which I happen to work at now, but like there was this kind of grungy abstraction that felt more relatable to me, you know, and it didn't feel like it was made for somebody's fancy house.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm allowed to improvise a question and break the scheme already, I don't know. I know it might be a little bit cliche, but I don't know if you have an answer for this, but, you know, I cannot not ask, now I realize, about, you know, we're talking about painting in the 2000s in New York. What about 2001, specifically for the art world and for you as people and as artists, how that affected you? I know it's kind of a big question, but I don't know, did the art world change very quickly?
I wasn't here yet.
Yeah, everything changed. I think the struggle was harder economically for somebody arriving to the city. It was really hard. I remember being proud of overpassing that crisis, and I lived in an apartment that I called the cave. and I had a studio visit, very important, and it was like a railroad apartment, and I had one painting in each railroad, and then I had to take them all in the snow for my studio visit to Deans Daderkos that wrote a text in the book, and there I had my studio visit, and it was super hard because Argentina also clashed. So everything that was rolling first was here and then was Argentina, and for me was very hard. And one thing we were talking while we were preparing for the talk also is like how I detected that each time that this crisis come, economical or this kind, the art world goes back to painting. Like the safe haven is painting, like pays attention to painting again. In the meanwhile, everybody snobs painting because it's not contemporary, or I don't know what they say. I don't understand. But when everything is very hard, painting is again in the critics, in the galleries, like the system goes back to painting, and maybe that also happened at that time.
I mean, I think it's true that then anyone who was thinking of themselves historically as a, you know, their mark making, what mark they would make in the art trajectory, were probably going to reject painting. And I found it more interesting to redefine painting. And again, like painting had been defined as hypermedium specific, about the flat surface. And therefore I started painting on sculptures, on 3D. And to me, painting is much better defined by color than by any two-dimensionality.
I remember something people were talking about then was like the end of irony that was like kept coming up over and over again. That at that time, the 90s was very ironic and snarky, and everything was like, my painting is just like gum on this painting, you know, and this kind of bad boy gesture. And I just remember, reading about it and thinking about it, just like it just didn't feel like good. That didn't feel good. Like, you know, it was like there's actually like real shit going on in the world. Like, and you're making jokes about modernism. You know, it seemed really, to me, that was like the end of my interest in this kind of like position of sort of adolescent resistance, I guess.
or this idea of the death of the author. And I always felt like as a woman, I didn't need to be dead. Like I was already not being allowed to talk
Yeah, right.
much, you know, so that wasn't interesting.
Right. Or the pastiche, that was something like everything's been used, so now you're only quoting, you know? Yeah.
That in a way is the perfect jump to the next topic we had discussed, one of the many aspects of womanhood, which is motherhood, and motherhood and being an artist, which is something that is an experience that really affected your life in different ways. Do you want to talk about that? Affected, it sounds strong, but I think affected is also related to affection, so I liked it. Yeah, affected is affection.
Yeah, affection. For me is I didn't have more time for bullshit. Basically, like I turned into a more productive than ever because I couldn't lose time in things that I would lose time before. In a way, also more isolated because I had to find all the time I could to work, but I never stopped working. But I felt that like the scene was giving me time, like you're busy, like a little neglecting me because they assumed that I couldn't or whatever, and that was hard. Like the only reason I wanted to have kids was because I was more stable in my career, and I thought, well, now it's a good moment. And as soon as I have my first kid, it was like, and somebody, like a very famous painter, told me, I see what you've been doing. Like, I don't paint anymore or what, And so I think there is a punishment for being a woman and a mother and an artist. There is maybe now it changed, but when I faced it, it wasn't easy at all.
Yeah, I agree. I remember the first years of like, wait, why isn't anyone like, why is everyone gone? And I also remember a conversation about another friend who had a young kid or just had a kid, and this curator who was a friend of mine was saying, oh, I don't want to bother her, I'm not going to invite her in this show. And I said, let her decide that, don't give her space, she might not need it.
Unsolicited space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gotten a lot better, I think. I don't know, a little better? But I can't tell because I'm inside of it now.
I'm not sure. I'm a recent matter. I'm not sure it changed that much.
Not that much.
In my humble opinion,
Not really.
as a mother in the arts, from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I'm not an artist, it's different, but
Right.
the thing about not being invited, very much.
Yeah.
I had friends who've been like, oh, I didn't want it to bother you. I know how busy you are now.
But also just all the structures of time with being an artist don't really accommodate being a mother. Like going to an opening between 6 and 8, that's a little hard to pull off. Or residencies, artist residencies, you can't just leave for 3 weeks. There are very few who accept children.
I feel like for me, I almost switched from the group, that didn't have kids to like the artist group that did, because they were embracing this and not thinking like, okay, you can't. Well, you have to do it differently, really. Different hours.
And then, we wanted to talk a little bit about, painting, and maybe talk more about painting, not just a little bit. And, something that you all were discussing during preparations for the talk was about the painting process. And, and then after, I would love, Alejandra, if you talk a little bit about what you call the regenerative quality of painting, which is a very interesting, but talk a little bit,
is the possibility, I think, endless of like how Fabienne was saying, like it's the hardest because it's a very classical medium, but at the same time the challenge is bigger. So that's how I get caught in it, because at the beginning maybe I was working with other materials and I thought the results were very different very easily, but then with painting I find it harder, but also more challenging. And this regenerative thing that I call it like that is a way to follow my own thread. Like as I said before, I got more isolated because I had kids. Like also I began building a body of work, like a history when I look behind, that had many threads, loose ends that I could, because when developing a body of work, I magnify one aspect of it and then all the rest stays on the side. And then I find out that I have many things that I haven't gone again to, and I found out that I do loops and recover those things and magnifies those things, and that's how everything evolves. And I always think I have a very big idea, but then at the end it's the same idea in a different version. And I'm thinking that I'm revolutioning all my work, nobody will understand who I am anymore, and then it's the same thing in a different version. And so this sort of thing of finding something that was not the subject and then can become a subject and can evolve. That's what I call the regenerative aspect of painting.
Yeah.
And kind of related to that, I think painting to me has this propensity to not resist criticism, but on the contrary, embrace it and transform itself without abandoning its identity, let's say. So I think
And I did anything to not work on a stretched canvas. Like that just felt like too heavy, too much pressure, the oil paint, and I tried like this panels and the silk screen and the paper and I went, but because I wanted to make images, but I didn't care if they were paintings. And it just like, it's taken me like 20 years to figure out how to make a painting on a stretched canvas painting. It's like the simple. I could have just done that in the beginning, but instead I took this like really long way around to get there, as if I like was inventing something new. But it's totally just like the standard format. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it before because it was so loaded up with, there was like everything you're saying, it's a responsive medium, but I didn't want to have to respond to other painting criticism,
Yeah, but that's what I mean, though. You ended up painting, like that's it. I'm not saying it's easy,
no,
either. That this response or this reciprocity or this response, but it stays alive somehow, transformed.
Yeah, but even responding to the criticism, that's also gives me reason in the regenerative aspect of it, because I work a lot responding to criticism. They say painting is decorative. Okay, I will paint an interior. And then something else happens inside that. It's not just an interior, and it's not, and like I think this is related also to teaching, to like everything they teach us can be really revoked. And from there you can develop a new idea. So it's eternally regenerative, because even when you're going against a dogma, you find something new. I think.
No, I agree. I remember remember, like, I just hated composition. I hated having to back up, look, and see if something was good. That was, not the relationship I wanted to have to the work. And so I think that's why I ended up making 3D pieces that you can walk around. I didn't want one point of view to be privileged.
Exactly. Yeah,
or
you can
do
use
mini
it.
golf.
Or you can do a mini golf.
No, well, I remember another, this painting has 2 paintings inside. That was another criticism. Okay, I will do one painting, divided in the middle, and then 3, 4, whatever, multiples. Like, everything can work in your advance if you use it. I think that's the amazing. That's how I get entertained. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting what you said, Alejandra, about painting coming back in times of crisis, right? And what you just said, because that statement about painting coming back in times of crisis is typically used, in media to refer to the fact that buyers go to painting during times of crisis because painting is easier and quicker to sell, so it's a commodity. And what you're saying, it's a little bit more complex and way richer, which is that painting, can be a way to resolve a crisis and a stagnation of the system, and you're taking actually the oldest, because painting is, and I don't know if you thought about this, but painting is the original art device. Everything before the invention of easel painting by the Renaissance was not really called art. Everything we understand as art begins in the Renaissance. I mean, of course there was art before, it was just not called art, but the art system, the art world, the idea of the artist as we know it, the modern idea of the artist begins in the Renaissance with the easel painting. So you guys are going back to the original device of art, and using it to resolve a crisis of art. And I think that's super rich and something to highlight about the role of painting in the art system. But there was also a discussion about beauty in painting.
Right. That's the commodity piece. That's for me was the problem of it, which is that, especially like when I first was avoiding it, I would say, there was this thing hanging over it, like it's a commodity, it's decorative because somebody would want it as an object. But that is, and that beauty, so the paintings I was into then would be like, Albert Erlin and like the German, Charlene von Heil, and like making it really difficult, really like challenging somebody's notion of taste, that kind of thing. But I personally have come around to feeling like, beauty is like a reprieve from like everything that we're kind of dealt with politically right now and personally, and that may be just like a sign of age where like sincerity, like it's just genuinely difficult to make something good, and that I'm not like actively resisting anything. I'm like saying yes to making something that actually could maybe connect with somebody. Like that would be a miracle almost to be able to accomplish, and I think it has to do with just like maybe developing a reverence for people and their time, and like just somebody showing up to look at something, you want to like give them something too, it's not like generosity, right? And it's not like I'm gonna you're gonna come here and I'm gonna like make it unpleasant for you in some way, like and make you work for it or hate it. And also just the reality is like not every painting is a commodity. It could be, it's potentially a commodity, but most of them aren't. Most of them go into storage somewhere, so I don't think like the potential of a sale, it's so abstract, and it's just, it is not an issue for most people to resist actively. Lucky you if that's your big problem. Yeah,
this all comes about a discussion they were having, just to contextualize it, about how there's this stereotype, this false binary between an artwork being beautiful or being political. And, like what she just said, it's obviously, just to recap what you said in a much more beautiful, complex, and beautiful way, that something that is beautiful can be powerfully political because it's beautiful, and despite being beautiful and because it's beautiful. And I would love to bring a quote by a fellow Argentine artist, related, I think, adjacent to that, not related, but adjacent to that she said in a panel that being happy is a political duty, which I think is beautiful. Liliana Porter said that. That like the search for happiness is a political, duty, and I would love to say beauty is also a political duty, right?
Yeah, when we were talking about beauty, also joy came in the discussion in a way. But I think, also that could go, the same thing of political or not could go to abstraction as well, in a way. But regarding beauty, I was really challenging beauty at the beginning, I think, like really looking for weird beauties but then I realized that it's like singing a song we all know in a way, and you can sing it in many ways, or different songs. We know many songs, and so I think my experience with beauty, beauty is very cliche, is when I went to France, to Paris, in front of Leonardo da Vinci, I was like, this is beauty. But I realized that beauty was these faces being so nice, beauty was being nice. And that can be translated in many ways, in different moments, in different contexts. But I think basically it's like when the painter touches the other in a consensual way, we are getting together here, and that's beauty for me, that encounter. I don't know.
Yeah, I think obviously beauty is not the same thing for everyone, and I do think beauty is often very ideological and is worth pushing up against. And I connect this whole discussion a lot with pleasure, more than a kind of agreed upon definition of beauty. Yeah. I think pleasure, joy, trusting the senses is very important and can be an act of resistance, and has a very long trajectory in feminism. And I think the world communicates to us through the senses, and that can be through beauty, and it's important to listen to that, and to it's a worthy, pursuit to kind of develop that relation to the world.
Elaine Scarry has that amazing book on beauty that she was writing as an academic when nobody wanted to hear about that, and her kind of position was that it is that advertising took over beauty as a method for sales, because they know the power of a beautiful image can contain. And so artists kind of abdicated that territory. We're like, okay, you got beauty, so if I make something beautiful, it looks like an advertisement to you now. So you guys, you got that, and we'll do this other abject stuff over here. And that it was sort of a political, she's proposing that it be a political gesture to take back some of that territory, because it is powerful. But then the example just to show how subjective it is, then in the book she gives this example of this beautiful sculpture, which is a plexiglass chair sitting in the ocean. And I was like, that is ridiculous.
That's ugly.
Yeah, so it just, it's so subjective that it really is, it doesn't work well with critical theory, because it is a puff.
It's slippery.
It's slippery, right? So a friendship, but people are tackling those things, and it doesn't just need to be about Adorno. There are these other kind of areas.
Maybe it's the intention of the artist, just that.
Just the intention.
The Campbell soup,
Right.
when we see the Campbell soup of Warhol, is he's making it beautiful, and we understand, and before that it wasn't elevated to that point, but we feel like the artist trying
Yeah.
to make it beautiful. And so there we get together, like an agreement.
Right. It's like being a hostess. Like you can tell they're trying
Yes.
to welcome you.
It's interesting the example you just gave, Alejandra, because it goes back to the problem of advertisement.
Yes.
The subcan is actually that, or the Brillo soapbox. It goes back to that, and it's actually Warhol like appropriating the appropriation of advertisement at the same time, and actually not only playing around with the agreement around the intention of the artist and what we say is beautiful, but with the disagreement of a lot of people that says like that's not art because it's not beautiful, and it's appropriating those two operations at the same time. And I don't know, so many things, I'm going to our last topic before so that we have some time to hear any questions from the audience, but, these, all these operations that Warhol did or Duchamp did, all these like big popes, male popes of the 20th century, that they opened so many trends around. Something you were all commenting on is that, that today we're in a world in which there's so many multiple trends, and and you were wondering about how to locate yourself in the pluralism in painting. How, if you want to expand on that, I think is. Please correct me. Like I might have misinterpreted what you were noting, in your notes, but.
No, I think we were chatting about that, and I don't know, maybe you guys have ideas about it, but it doesn't seem to me that there's a really particularly strong dominant trend. I mean, there are these like mini trends where it's like, okay, I see a lot of like surrealistic kind of landscapey things with like a woman's hiding, this kind of sort of illustration-y kind of stuff, but nothing kind of like big that feels like, oh, exciting and new and a big area that everybody's looking at. To me,
not
it
in
feels
the
like
language,
lots
but
of
yes,
little-
in the group. Now it's all about which drawer you are in. I mean, I don't
like
feel it like
identity, you mean?
exactly. I don't feel it like it now. It's a trend, like it's in the language, but it's more in the who is doing it, the background, the color, the sex, and
Right.
that's all now. I think that's this moment. Like that's also like the contrast that I was thinking about Jeffrey Deitch, what he was showing in the 2000s and what he's showing now. Now he's only showing people of color, and before he was showing guys and Vanessa Beecroft, like, yeah. Not true.
Yeah, it's true.
And now it's like everything about who you are. I mean, it's like I think it's not anymore about the language at this exact point of I don't know. If you think like
But
that.
that's also the discourse around the art,
Now, but before it
That's the
wasn't like that.
Yeah, no, but maybe it's not. I mean, artists are way more wonderful and sophisticated and complex. Not all of them, but some of them are, and it goes beyond that. But yeah, the discourse around that, I feel like so many times that's conflated, the discourse around art and what art is on itself, which is something way harder to define, like art is not a commodity. Even if people want to treat it as a commodity, it's always going to be more, because it's going to have a more powerful message beyond that. Art is always going to be, good art is always going to be way more.
Vanessa Beecroft, oh my God. Like, and so it is like opening up this the field to like allow these different voices in, and these different voices bring like different styles in, and I think it's kind of exciting actually, because it's freeing up, you know, people aren't sure like who to listen to. Like, and that's good, that's healthy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it changed the art world.
Yeah.
Really changed it, and in a very good way. Yeah. But I feel this is now the biennial in Venice was about that, and they're all looking for this to find samples of the art that these people that we don't know do. Mm-hmm. Somehow it's a little like that. But yes, I think art resists everything, and at the end, what stays is the work. And here we are. We're women, and we work.
I don't know. Does anybody in the audience have any question?
Hi, thanks so much. I just was wondering if you could spend just a couple minutes telling us a little bit about what you're doing now.
That's a great question. Thank you so much.
I don't know. I'm working on paintings that are a hybrid in between carpets and figures. I push myself to figuration a little bit more after being always in the middle, and that's how I decided the mini golf to be done with carpet, because it was already in my language. These paintings were not included because we didn't want to crash the whole two things, but I've been 1 year experimenting with this hybrid in between carpet and painting, and with the purpose of trying to use the human figure in a way, and also a series of paintings about sculpture. And because I always think that I'm thinking in abstract ideas, and then the paintings can be figurative or abstract, but the idea is just a space with sculpture, and sculpture could be whatever. So it helps me to have a very tight structure and at the same time total freedom. So that's what I'm working on. You? What are you working on?
Well, I just finished this show with Paola, who's here at Tapete Volante Projects in Gowanus. So that's the work that I have flashing by here. And I'm just there, you know, and that work is like, they are they're paintings that are made unstretched, and then I unravel the edges of them and sew a piece around and then re-stretch them. And they're made with like this homemade oil paint and these kind of water dispersions. And I'm continuing along that road. I'm on that road. Yeah.
Of unraveling canvases.
Yeah.
And my last show, which was just in March, was the images that you see now, and called Listeners. And I've been kind of obsessed with the idea of making pieces that are able to listen instead of claiming things. Instead of being a self-expression, they listen, so they're able to receive. So they're kind of subdued. The center is often empty or kind of, you know, with little information. And that had led me to collaborate with other artists. And the last time I did that with choreographer Beth Gill, who did a choreography for the pieces. This was in Athens, Georgia.
We just went through all of them. But anyway, of course, you're all welcome to look more into the website. There were more questions, I think.
Hi there. I have two questions. One is, I was a little unclear when the two of you that were here in 2001 said everything changed. Were you talking about 9/11? Were you talking about the .com crisis? What was the event you're talking about, and what changed when everything changed?
I was talking about like September 11, 2001.
Okay.
I was talking, I think, yeah.
So how did things change in the art world here after that, or before and after?
I was selling my work in Argentina and here, and all of a sudden everything froze. It was like, what job should I get to? I began working with a lawyer, for example, for a while, and babysitting in a place that was a company, and they were doing branding. Actually, they were an office of doing branding, and I could do whatever I wanted, but I had to shift my life because in Argentina there was a thing called the Corralito, and everything got frozen. The banks, and here also was very tough, and so I was just arriving to the city 2 years.
In an act of resistance, is that a newer idea? I mean, because tougher art or more political art maybe was expected or encouraged, and now beauty and joy, it's time for beauty and joy to be welcomed back, or I thought that was a nice idea.
I don't think it's new. I think it's...
The Renaissance was all that.
No, but I think that, I don't know if I said that, I think we all said that, but I'm going to jump in. I think that one has to define beauty as more than, like, say, pretty, and that beauty can host paradox and contradiction, and when I'm seeking beauty, that's what I'm talking about. It's a very complex ability to be joyful, yet see the darkness, or be joyful perhaps in spite of what one knows and one also cares about. But I don't think it's new. And I think in our culture now, pleasure is very distrusted, and I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many ways to think about it, but for me, it has to do with sincerity, I guess, and not. I don't know. I think it's just more about saying yes to stuff instead of no to other stuff. Like, that's the position to take. Like, I'm into this, not like I define myself by the things I hate. You know.
Yeah, taking pleasure seriously.
Yeah.
Hi. It's wonderful to be here and look at all of your amazing work, which I've enjoyed for many years. And Alejandra, as long as I've known you and your work, one of the things that I have really appreciated about it is the incredible kind of pluralistic capacity of how much you allow into your work. And given our age, one could see that as kind of coming up in mixed language painting, but I think it goes much deeper for you. And I'm just wondering, like, is there ever a moment when you're making a painting where you're like, no, that can't come in? You know, because it seems to me like you allow yourself so much freedom and you give yourself so much permission. And I think that's something that a lot of artists struggle with, but you and a lot of my other like idol artists just claim it. And so I'm wondering if you can just talk about that kind of capacity and expansion in your work.
Yeah, the subject of freedom is, for me, very important. It looks silly to talk about it because, of course, artists, we should be free and we should use freedom. But sometimes I find out that people is like surprised that I use color. And I'm like, I'm a painter, I use color. And yeah, but I think all these strategies also of, that's why I also never settle on figurative or abstract, because I think that allows me freedom, actually. Because that's what I don't do. I don't settle. I don't settle for one or the other because I feel caught. If I do a completely figurative painting, I feel I am like muting the possibility of saying more things. And I think that ambiguity that I'm behind is what allows me to use everything. And talking about the song, we can sing all together, like the beauty agreement for me. But even if I do whatever, I say I will do whatever paintings, whatever, like cualquier cosa paintings, everything paintings, or everything counts painting. I found out that it's very specific what I choose. It's not anything. So in a way, it all deducts alone. I mean, it just finds its place. And I think the moment that I say no is the moment that I feel like I'm outside of it, like I don't have anything to add. And that's where I say no, I'm out. At one point I cannot add anything. When I cannot add anything, that's the no, like you're out. And then I think the painting is by itself at that point. Yeah.
I wonder, I got a little bit late, so I missed the beginning. But I wonder what I feel about you girls, all of us, actually. I'm also paint as well, but I don't see myself painter or sculpture and you guys are putting a lot of pressure in the word painting. And yes, we started painting, the world started painting. We started other things too, you saw David. So all those things, and I can feel what I felt since I arrived here. Was very like prejudice, the word painting. And painting can be anything. This earth, could be a slash, could be a painting, or like any form of art. For me, it's a little bit complicated, all those labels that people are putting in everything now. When I include about genders, painting, black and paintings. Also bothers me a lot that now there is a lot of illustration there. It's called painting. That, for me, is offensive. And I saw this, I didn't go to the Venice Biennial, but I saw a lot of that mixed. There was not a line, a boundary between illustration and painting. So all that is, we're growing very much in all this direction. So I wonder how this word painting, is so heavy. I don't know if I explain well.
Yes, I understand you, but for me it's heavy because I had to defend it for a long time.
But that's why you have to defend it?
Because everything was against painting.
Well, I was listen. I started a sculpture, did painting. I did
do
together.
sculpture, I do ceramics.
Exactly. We do many. When I started
in my
here,
case, I think in the paintings. It's where I am thinking. Then all the rest is something I use to come out and come back. And yes, it's all work. It's all art.
I think it's all art.
I don't know. I think it's there is also a very big punishment against painting. That's why maybe we use it so much, because I noticed that when you go in a room and people feel the pressure of being in front of a painting, but if there is a drawing, everybody's okay with the drawing because it's little, it's intimate, whatever. But the painting is gets people a little more scared because it's the author, the painter, the artist. So I think in a way I need to defend it. I always felt, because when I arrived here, everybody was so proud to quit painting. Everybody, I went to this residency in Skowhegan, and that year I quit painting, and they were the smart ones, and they were treating painters are the numb or the idiots of the picture, and that's why I decided to defend it in a way like that. But it's true, painting is in that. It's everywhere, and it has many, many shapes and forms.
Exactly. That's why, my first exhibition in New York was in '78. I was not even living here. So I've been through all those movements, everything that passed.
Yeah, well, you can more for a moment that the artist was considered conceptual art.
Still has some expressionism, end of the... conceptual, though. But I, for example, never stopped what I was doing painting, whatever I was doing, was always. And I always feel, for me, I'm talking about this heavy weight that people put on the word painting. So
for me, it's more humble. It's if not, I feel like I'm saying like Michelangelo, But if I do, I'm a painter, okay, I'm this. At least we know I'm this.
You're an artist.
I'm an artist.
Yeah, no, I think we all are artists, period. It doesn't mean that you... Any medium can be, depends how you protect.
I don't care that much about painting or whatever, and we could probably talk about our work in any number of ways, but this was just the framework that was chosen for this discussions, but I think we could work within other frameworks.
No, I understand,
yeah.
And I saw even when I may start even referring from since the past and everything, but I felt that now completely advertising as well, working in advertising company. But that's, I'm trying to avoid this word to be, I say for myself, the pain of painting, the word painting. And suddenly I see three artists and kind of a feel related to you girls with this word, that's why I ask.
But I think all of us think between categories, and that's a very kind of juicy place to be.
Yeah.
That may be what unites us, and painting is one of the categories.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think that kind of like what Alejandra was saying earlier about the interesting thing to go back to the cliche. You know, painting is a cliche, and I don't know if you were here when I was talking about how it's very interesting about painting that is the original art form, you know?
Yeah, no, that's why I
Yeah.
started this conversation, because when you come from Renaissance to paintings.
You know, but it's as a reference, I mean. that doesn't-
No,
yeah.
I understand, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why.
yeah. Yeah, but I think, you know, it's something interesting about that. Can I say to close, unless we have any more questions? Sorry, please go.
Because you were talking about defending it. I mean, with a lot of this conceptual and abstract art that we get now, I generally see that there's an artist statement that goes along with it. So when you're talking about defending it, I mean, I mean, here we're looking at the artwork, so there's no statement alongside it. But do you find if you have to defend it, you're defending your explanation of the painting and your conception of what you created that you put in the artist statement? Is it separate from each one that you can defend that, that idea? Can you express the idea, say, kind of away from the painting, so when somebody's looking at the painting, they can carry your conceptual idea and understand your work a little bit more? Excuse me?
What is the question?
The question is, the manner in which you defend your art. I mean, are you defending what you present in the artist's statement as well? I mean, can you make that relationship so one can...
The artist statement changes all the time for me. I think I redefined it each time I find more things. I haven't been thinking a lot about the artist statement. I just finish some works and I try to understand. Sometimes the work precedes me. I don't have a project like it's so close. There are some guidelines, but then it builds in itself, and then I have to translate what is all this about, and then the artist statement may come after. Actually, it's not that it's so projectual. Yeah.
No, I know. You can't really make the artist statement until you finish your work and you really kind of puts it all together at that moment when you feel like it's complete.
Can I even add that, I mean, in my experience working with many artists, so many artists don't do artist statements at all. So many. Like they have a curator do it for them if needed, or they have an assistant do it for them. The artist statement is a product of the CRIT device, which is a very specific educational system in the arts that is very American, it belongs to a moment in our history, to a moment in culture, and it's one way to. And I mean, it makes a curator's work very easy to have an artist statement, but it typically also does it very dangerous because you're taking the artist's intention as a fact, and that is complicated because it closes the readings on an artwork and on a project, and it cancels the possibility of a conversation between a curator and an artist, another artist, and audiences. So it's tricky. I'm very glad that Alejandra doesn't work with artist statements. It made our work for this show extremely harder, and Alejandra can attest. These were like hours and months of trying to refine what the show would be about, but it made it way more interesting. painful sometimes, but at the same time wonderful.
You had your statement, though.
I had a statement. I was the one like cutting some decisions, and it's hard. And it was like, but it was like a way to like just guide what you were doing, like my decisions were only possible because of what you said. This, and I think also the reason why an artist like Alejandra, if you dare me, like. If you allow me to, either to read you or interpret you, the reason why an artist like Alejandra doesn't work with an artist statement is because of something very powerful about her work, which is that she's so focused on process. And process is so important to her work. And I dare to say the same about you too also. I mean, when you see your slides and the way that you talked about it, process, and how the work develops is such an important part of it. It's less projectual, it's more processual. I don't know if that word exists. And I think, that's a type of artist, and a type of work, and it's like super interesting.
Yeah, I struggle with the statements. I hate them. It's something I had to sit. I tried to go with it, and now it's maybe a mix of different texts I got, and that's it.
Actually, thank you for that comment, because it opened a question to the curator. Because the curator, in the old days, there was this book analyzing the most important individual in the chess of art, not the museum owner, not the gallery owner, not even the mentor, but the curator.
But that's like the artist statement or the creed, or it's one of the many art historical devices that changes over time. Happily, I believe curators are really important right now. And not by chance, if you think about it, that changed around the Me Too movement.
That's good to know. That's good to know, because I was going to say...
That changed significantly. I think it's changing as we speak, and it's changed a lot. And I was just talking about this with a friend recently. It changed around me too. And, the big names, they're disappearing. And, But anyway.
But for me as an artist, like, as I work, trying to find things while I paint, also the show and the opportunity to work with a curator is to give all that to somebody that can give me back a different thing, a different sensation that I originally thought about. So also it's another layer of the work being able to talk to me again in a different way.
The connection between the curator or the representative or the gallerist, whoever, and the artist has to be like a love affair. There has to be passion. Otherwise, then it becomes limited. Is it based on concept? Is it based on abstract? Is it based on installation? It has to be in a passion. I mean, I love, like you said, I love the strength of the art.
Everything with Alejandra is about passion. The friendship with Alejandra is about passion. But that's good. That's, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's very boring. With wonderful, very important artists, they're just boring. And they know what they, and they give you a statement, and you try to push a different reading. Sometimes they accept it, sometimes they don't. And sometimes the process is really, but it's like people. I mean, artists are people. You have very good professionals that are very boring, and very good professionals that are very passionate. Anyway, but let's celebrate passion, and let's go have a drink in the next room. Passionately have a drink. Thank you, everybody.